Well, joined today by Peter Aitken, and Peter, welcome to this series of interviews we're doing on former Rovers players. We go back a long way with Rovers, aren't you? 13 years old, I think you were when you first came across from Wales.
13, probably 12 actually, Keith. When I first sort of got linked with Bristol Rovers with our Cardiff nursery, and obviously, every schoolboy's dream, I suppose. I went on to play professional football, for a football club that I actually loved as well.
And was that Stan Montgomery as well?
No, that was Len Williams before Stan Montgomery.
Right.
Len, I think he was even back in the day with the likes of Phil Roberts and Frankie Prince. And then, everyone has their time, and Len obviously, I think, became, age got the better of him, and then Stan came in and was an enthusiastic replacement, I have to say.
Quite a production line, wasn't it? You had Welsh youngsters coming across to Bristol at that time.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it continued for a number of years.
Yeah, there was a terrific line of youngsters coming through, with lads that sort of came before me during my time and after me. There were so many good players, but then what you realise is the demand, to become a professional footballer is so high. And I saw lots of very good players who I thought and assumed at the time would make pros, and they didn't. And sometimes I sort of thought to myself, well, what did I have that got me through? Because at the time you all you're doing is playing football, and it's something you love, and there's no fear in it as a youngster. You just enjoy playing, and then it's like you get a tap on the shoulder and say, well, thank you very much, you're not required anymore. That must be an awful pain.
Pete, we just go back before he came over. Right? Wales renowned for its rugby team. Did you ever play rugby at all?
Well, I went to a rugby school, Keith, and all my sports teachers were ex-rugby players. And they obviously were aware that, my skill was really football rather than rugby. And they didn't try to dissuade me, but they did put me into a rugby game one day. And not that I ever thought of me being afraid of anything in the world of football, but I was thrown this ball one day, and I decided to run, which you do in rugby. But every time I looked up, there was this great big chap coming towards me. I say another boy, actually. And I thought, I'll try and avoid him. Before I know it, I'd run off the pitch. So, no, it probably wasn't a game for me.
Okay, so were your parents bringing you over to Bristol, or you trained in Cardiff, I guess, did you, for a while, and then come over to Bristol weekends?
Yeah, we trained in Cardiff 2 nights a week at Ninian Park School, actually, which was, only a minute from Cardiff City's football ground. And then we'd play on a weekend in Cardiff. I'd play school matches on a Saturday morning. I'd play for the what we call now Clifton St Vincent's on the Saturday afternoon in the Cardiff Youth League. And then we always had a game on a Sunday. So weekends were quite hectic. But at that age, between the ages of sort of, 13 and 15, it's what every boy wanted to do, really, was play football matches. So I never ever thought about being tired or wearing myself out, not till later life.
And then, presumably at 16, you're offered an apprenticeship. Is that how it went?
Yes, it was. It's when the football sort of really kicked in. Is that I came to Eastville to play in a trial match when I was about. I was still 12, and. When I came off the pitch, a gentleman came across to me and said, "Oh, where's your dad, son?" And I said, "Well, he's on the terrace watching it." This was on a Sunday morning. Lovely day at the end of the season. And Eastville, it did look quite impressive, actually, at that particular time. And little did I know at the time that man was Bill Dodging. So Bill must have saw something he liked. And obviously he went to my dad and said, "Look, we need to sign your boy. We'll get you the forms and all this." And when I came out, my dad said, "Well, you must have done all right then." And my dad wasn't a connoisseur on football at all, to be honest. And I said, "Well, I think it was okay, yeah." He said, "Well, they said they want to sign you." So that sort of really got my taste buds going then. I thought, what, you mean I might have a chance of being a footballer? I just took it in my stride, really. I signed schoolboy forms, and that meant I was associated with the club. I suppose the rest is history, really. I went through the predictable program of becoming an apprentice, which was, it was a I was so excited about coming over as an apprentice and getting to actually see and be involved with professional footballers. Because to young kids out in the valleys or out in rural areas, the power of professional football it's a massive pulling. How can I say? Energy for someone who wants to get involved in sport. But for me, just to come along and just look at these players and watch them train, that was exciting in itself. But then to sort of start associate with them. And I was very lucky, I have to say, when I look back over the years now on what young lads have to do and what levels of football they play at. I mean, at 15, I was being thrown into the London combination because it was a case of, well, the boys are either going to sink or swim, although I didn't know and understand that at the time. And I'm playing against, it was a fantastic league, because you had seasoned pros playing it who couldn't get in the first team. And so that combination, for me, in terms of education as a learning step, was absolutely fantastic, and if I compare that to some of the boys today now who are apprentices, coming into the club, and, they get to play against boys at the same age, whether they get a chance of playing in a high-level reserve game or anywhere near the first, it's. I think for them, their learning curve is a lot slower, and in that day there was a thought, and as I went through football actually, that if someone shows that they've got something, let's find out straight away if he can cope with it, and there was always the opportunity to have a go, and if someone didn't quite come up to the mark, well, let's just bring him out and we'll give him a little bit of time and we'll go again.
Apprenticeships then very different to what the scholars are today. So I think you had to do all the jobs and clean players' boots and everything, didn't you?
We did. Yes, it was. The one thing I say about the apprenticeship that I had was that it certainly left you with a desire to want to succeed, to be a footballer, because you didn't want to go out and paint, and you didn't want to go out and sweep, and you didn't want to walk up and down a stretch of grass with a fork, just turning over divots and things like that. So for me, it quietly sort of gave me this desire that I want to be a footballer. I don't want to have to do jobs like this, if you know what I mean. So it was in my hands, and fingers crossed, and we had some really good football people around the club at the time. The likes of Bill Dodgin, Bobby Campbell, Don Megson came to the club, who was a positive influence. But what was also a bonus for me is that a lot of the senior pros were always willing to help and talk. With all the mickey taking that went on in football, and it took me 2 years to realise what was going on within the dressing room psyche, if you know what I mean. But for me, it was a great learning curve, and I was very fortunate that I had some really good mentors in the football club with the senior players, and the likes of Bill, Bob, Joe Davis, who was he was great support, Joe, on the youth side. And I look back and think, and all these people had been in the game. They were ex-players, they'd been involved, so they knew, for youngsters what you were going to be going through and what it was going to take to get you the other end, and I'm just so grateful that I was one that got through, that apprentice period.
You made your first team debut, I think 1972, I believe, Chesterfield.
Right, that seems such a long
I know, it does a long time ago. But you played quite a few games that season. I mean, what was it like at Eastfield? I mean, people hear supporters talk of Eastfield. What was it like playing?
Well, Eastfield was a great atmosphere. It was actually, for me, on a Tuesday night at Eastfield, for me, that's when the stadium was at its best. It always had a buzz about it. And even then, in those days, I used to walk to the game because I didn't have a car. And I would walk down through the streets, and people do get to know you, because being in football, good luck tonight, Pete, one thing and another, and and it was sort of, it never seemed as if, oh, what a fantastic occasion this is. This is what I do, this is my job, and I just walk down through the streets, get to the ground, go in, do all the stuff that you do in terms of warm up and preparation, and then that buzz of walking down the tunnel and then you've got thousands of people who want you to succeed, and that sort of spills across on the pitch. But Eastville on a Tuesday evening with the floodlights on for me, it was fantastic.
Moving on a couple of years, it was a promotion season, obviously 73, 74. You didn't play too many games that season. Was there a reason for that? Were you injured? Did he put?
No, there was for my reason not playing. Actually, when I look back, it was a good reason. In that the season before, I played quite a few games, and we had a lad called Mike Green, and Mike was in the team, and he broke his leg, unfortunately. So I got the chance to have a run and gain some experience, which I was so grateful for, because Mike was playing well at the time. And at the end of that season, Mike spent all summer training and getting himself fit and back together. And Don Megson thought, well, I'll have a look at Mike early on in the season to see how he goes, which was fair, because I think Mike was going to be made club captain at the time. And I have to say, Mike had a fantastic start to the season, and I quickly stepped back and went, I'm not going to get in here. I'm just going to have to bide my time. And patience is something you have to learn in the world of professional sport. But it was, in all fairness to Mike, they had a great season. The team were banging in goals left, right and centre. Everyone was on a high. There was a massive buzz about the football club. And promotion years run football clubs are, they're great. We didn't have too many promotions, but just to have one, it was a great feeling. But Mike went, he captained the side to promotion, and but then I came in at the latter end of the season, and obviously Don Megson thought, well, the kid's ready, kind of thing. And Mike moved to Plymouth, and he carried on the good work as he went to Plymouth, became captain, and got them promoted as well.
Tell me about the end of that season, because Rovers went to Australia, I think, didn't it? But stopping it.
Well, let me just slightly go back before the end of the season, because we had so many highs that season, and there were so many memories and so many things that go on around a football club that you could write a book on. But I suppose the promotion night at Southend away, which any night or any day when you're actually, it's rubber stamped that you're up. It's a great moment. But we were on the bus coming back from Southend, and the manager relented for the first time ever and said, right, you can get some drink on board, lads, and we'll have a drink on the way back and a few sing-songs and all that. Anyway, I think we just got this side of London, and then the coach broke down, and then we were stuck, and it was a long night, because no one could sleep. Everyone was on a high, but all the drink had gone, and then the tiredness started to come in, and eventually they got a coach out to us, and we went back. But having said that, then obviously there was the tour to Australia, which was when it was announced. It was a bit jaw-dropping actually. So you got Australia, Thailand, New Zealand, and for someone of my age, I'd be about 19, I think. It was a great experience, absolutely great experience. And Australia, I have to say, when I was there, I did think that what a fantastic country to live in. And I just thought, the only thing that's stopping me from living here is that you haven't got the football I want. But it was a wonderful country, and fortunately my daughter's gone there to live, so I've been back, and I shall be going back again in a couple of years. And she did say to me, "Why don't you come and retire out here, Dad?" And I thought, "Oh yeah, maybe we'll see." But it was a wonderful tour, because it brought, the players were already tight knit, but then it brought the directors in. And other club officials, and we saw a different side to all of us. From the day-to-day and responsibilities that you have.
The players, we'll say the players at that time, people remember that team, don't they? And, Bannister and Warboys in particular stand out, I guess. But you had characters in the side. Jim Eadie. Well,
Jim was a special character, Jim, and I'll say this for him. He was probably, for a goalkeeper who was about 6'2" and a well-built lad, I will say. Quite a gentle man in lots of ways, and he did like his fun, Jim, there's no doubt about that. But on a serious note, he's probably the best goalkeeper this football club will ever get on a free transfer. Because he came in and the lad was under pressure, because if it didn't go for him at Bristol Rovers, I think Jim might have found himself out the game. But it was one of those times in everyone's career where you're in the right place at the right time. And, Jim had, however long he was here, he had a number of wonderful seasons that he can look back on and be rather proud of. But characters, Lindsay Parsons, Lindsay, quiet, unassuming, lovely sense of humour, but told you straight, never minced his words. Trevor Jacobs, who came over from Bristol City, Trevor was just a football enthusiast. That's when he came alive, Trevor. Off the pitch, quiet. Stuart, probably the nicest centre-half you'll ever meet. 6'5", and a gentleman on the pitch, and he was a gentleman off the pitch, actually. And then you got into the bones of the team. You got, Frankie Prince. Frank wanted to win, wanted everything for Bristol Rovers. Tommy Stanton, Tommy was a class act, wanted to play. Obviously, he had his days at Liverpool, so that rubbed off on him. Kenny Stevens, for me, was the key to the door, because Kenny could open so many doors for us. If we ever got in an awkward situation or the game was tight, invariably you think, give the ball to Kenny. And Kenny had the ability to open a door, there's no doubt about that. But the icing on the cake were the two lads up front. And that was Alan and Bruce. Alan, I think, knew that this is my time, and he loved it. Every day, that's all he did, Alan. It was a smile, it was a laugh, it was a joke. And you look at it because you think, yeah, there are times in football when things get a little bit tough. And Alan knew that he was on the crest of a wave, and every day was like Christmas Day, it's great to see people like that. And Bruce was a terrific professional, just worked at it, thought about it, is the way he behaved. A lot of Mickey taking round dressing rooms, Bruce just rose above it. And for me as a young person, watching people like this and how they dealt with situations, it was great experience for me to think, because you are tested in the dressing room, I've no doubt about it. But Bruce, never stopped thinking about it, how he could be better or how the team could be better. So he was always a challenge for Don Megson, really, because there would be lots of discussions about football, and that was another thing for me as a young player, listening to these discussions and, their points of view. And it was a great time for me learning as a young player coming through. But as a squad of players, and I suppose it's a challenge for all managers. It's getting all these players together at the right time to say, all I need to do is just manage now, they'll do the rest. And Don Megson, he'd got that.
Yeah, well, you actually established a place in the side. Mike Green, as you say, went to Plymouth and you stepped in, didn't you? And several seasons at the club, regular performer, went on to skipper the side. But Rovers didn't appear to spend the money to sustain a bid to go any higher when you look back.
No, they as a club, I suppose finance was always going to be an issue for us. And, when you look at what's in the game today in terms of sponsorship and all the corporate stuff that we have here at the Memorial Stadium now, we hardly had that at Eastville. And it was a case of what came through the gate, paid for the wages, and as a young footballer, I didn't think about anything like that. I wanted to put that shirt on, I wanted to be in that dressing room, and I wanted to be on that pitch. And all those problems were for other people to deal with. But you realise as time goes on how much finance it takes to run a football club. And we were probably punching above our weight in terms of finance. And we stayed in the second division for a number of years. And I think that was due to, it was a close-knit football club, I will say that. At the time, everybody you sort of felt were just there to get the first team as high as we could up the league. It was that feeling around the club that I suppose you had the likes of me, Phil Bater, Frankie Prince, Stuart Taylor, all these people who'd been a part of the club for some time. it meant so much to them to keep them at that level, because it was the highest level that we'd attained in the Football League. You know, and I think we were all rightfully proud that, you know, we got to that level and we wanted to stay there.
Just before we move on to the rest of your career, managers in your time at Rovers, Don Megson, you mentioned, was probably very good at managing that group, but Bill Dodgen and Bobby Campbell, also names from Rovers past who had quite an influence on the club.
Yes, Bill and Bob, I suppose, when I sort of got to know them at 15 when I came across an apprentice, you know, they were sort of a bit like a double act. They worked ever so well together, but the one thing that did impress me about both men was that their football knowledge and how they could take something what you thought might be difficult and make it seem quite easy and sensible and practical. So it was as if they were taking pressure away from you, you know, to do simple things in the way of football. And for me, they were great mentors at the time. As I said earlier on, because they understand the pressures, and I think with us as youngsters, they used to take those pressures away from us and make it look very simple. All you got to do is go out there. You want to kick the ball around? Go out and kick the ball around, son. You know, so we wouldn't have understood that. I didn't understand that. But their knowledge and the opportunities we had to sit and talk with the likes of Bill and Bob, for people like me and other lads in the game at the time in the football club, you know, they would have been quite influential on, you know, how things went in the future and how you looked at things.
Moving on, you eventually left Rovers. I read about a contract dispute. Whether was that the case, and then you moved across Bristol.
The move across to Bristol was the last part of that process, I have to say. And I'd been at the club a long time, actually, and you know, from a very young age, and I just felt that the club for me, I wasn't quite sure where they were going to go direction-wise. There were a few changes, and sometimes you have to understand the psyche of a football club to get the best out of it. And when you just bring people in from here, there, or wherever, and they want to go and do something totally different, it's not that I'm against change, I'm not. But you have to understand what you're working with and what it's about. And I think Bristol Rovers was one of those clubs where you just couldn't come in and go, right, I want to do this, I want to do that, and it, you know, you think that's not going to happen. I think it was always a club, because it was a close-knit, family-orientated club. You needed a bit of a feel for it to think, well, how am I going to move this on, you know? It was. I just thought, with some of the things that I was hearing behind the scenes, and I just thought, well, this is probably not my football club anymore, and maybe now it's time for me to change.
Ashton Gate, though, there was even more problems at Bristol City, because eventually you were one of the Ashton Gate 8, and will forever be known as one of them, I guess.
Yes. I mean, I'd spoken to a few clubs in between, and I was hopeful that something was going to come up. But in those days, and at that particular time, money was very short in the game. I have no doubt about that when I think back. Lots of players were going out the game, and I just thought, oh, you know, I was given a free transfer all of a sudden, and it wasn't as if, well, there's a club for you to walk into straight away. It was a difficult situation. But Bristol City came in, and you know, they put the offer on the table, and I'd been out of work for about a month or two, I think, by then. And you realise when you're out of work, no matter who you are, a working class man or a footballer, it's, you know, it's something you don't really want to experience. You just, I want to be working, I want to do something. So, you know, Bristol City came in, and I took up that option. And yes, it did become. It was a football club that probably had overstretched its means in terms of when it'd gone to the First Division, and there was probably no safety net in what happens if we come out the First Division. I suppose a little bit like the Premier League now. If you come out of it, there is a safety net for a couple of years, but you know, that's money that's needed for you to rebalance, you know, the changes that happen in football clubs. And there were a lot of changes at Bristol City, and it obviously got to the point where, financially they found themselves in a very difficult situation.
And you and 7 others tore up the contracts to allow them to continue or reform.
Yes, there was lots of discussions that went with the players that finally agreed to tear up their contracts. We'd had discussions with the club because there were players that were owed money that they were never going to get, and the PFA stepped in to sort of try and make it an amicable situation. And lots of things are said after that event. But as footballers, the last thing you ever want to see is, you don't want to bring a football club down. And it could have been brought down, but, I don't think anyone wanted to do that, regardless. And I know Rovers fans say to me, no, Pete, if only you'd said no. But, it's such a massive thing in the community, a football club. And it's not just the football on the Saturday afternoon that means so much to many people. There's lots of other things that, the football clubs are involved in.
You're skipper of both Bristol clubs. You're proud of that?
I suppose I'm a little bit old school in that as I remember in school, if you were asked to be captain of a team, it was always a proud moment. And in school, it was recognised that you are the team captain, one thing or another. I never got asked to be a team captain at school, but, I understand that there were other lads who were, asked for whatever reason to be captain. I always thought that was a proud moment for anyone. So I look back on it with pride, actually. Yes, that someone said there's something about you that we think, we're going to put you captain. So whether you're only captain for a year or whatever, or another manager comes in and changes it, that's entirely up to them. But, I was quite proud of it.
A brief spell at York, and then it was non-league football. You joined Lindsay at Cheltenham, I think, didn't you, eventually, as his assistant?
Yes, I did. Yes. We had some good years up there together, and then Lindsay went off to Gillingham. I declined that at that particular time because of my work, and Lindsay went on to Gillingham, and him and Tony had some, very good seasons there, and I joined him about a season or two after, I think it was.
And is that where football in the community that became your vocation? Were you community officer at Gillingham?
No, I was actually youth development manager, and as in the world of football, Keith, sometimes you're given a title and you think, well, what does that mean then? And I just took that role on. So I was doing a little bit of both. I was looking at finances for their youth setup and some of their community to see how it could be tied in. So it was an interesting learning curve, I have to say. I didn't realise it was going to lead on to community work.
What was your route back to Rovers, if you like? I mean, you had this experience at Gillingham, but as you say, you were travelling up every day or every week?
Yes, every week. And, the travelling was on the M25. It was a case of, well, we'd have to move. And Tony, Lindsay, myself, Wayne Jones, Mark O'Connor, all ex-Rovers, all good friends, and still good friends today, really. And but the travelling was another thing, and I thought, well, it's best that we move up as a family if we're going to continue with this. I think my family found it difficult after about a year or so. And I had two young daughters at the time, and it was a case of I need to make a decision here, and I made a decision to come home actually with the family. And as much as I love my football, and Tony, Lindsay, Mark, Wayne, we had some great times up at Gillingham, and we were all in the same house together, so it was football. And it was so it wasn't an easy decision to take, but it's my family. As much as I love my football, my family comes first.
And then how many years was it at Rovers as community manager?
About 16 years. And prior to that, though, when I came back from Gillingham, I spent probably 3 years helping Phil Bater out with the academy, because Phil was head of youth at the time, and he just said, well, would you come in and do some coaching and help out? And so I got involved in that. And then Ron Craig, God rest his soul, Ron approached me one day and said, would you fancy a community job? And I said, oh yeah, I'll have a, yeah. I thought, what's community? So, I then sort of asked a few questions or whatever, and, sat down and, Ron, he said, I'll come back to you. And he did, and we just got chatting, and I thought, yes, it all feels good. And I had 16 wonderful years, I have to say. I, loved every minute of it.
Different side of football, isn't it?
It is a different side of football, and I say this from a community point of view, and for people who are in the football club today, it's a very important part of the football club, because sometimes, with what goes on out there on a Saturday afternoon, the community, it can do so many positives for the football club in so many ways. And I always say this about the board of directors. I've heard some stories over the years about football clubs and community departments and in terms of finance whatsoever.
So, retirement? Golf, is that going to play a bigger, larger part in your life now?
Well, I'm glad you said that, Keith, because to talk to me about all what I've done in life and not mention golf, that would only be a part of my life, actually. I love my golf, and I had the opportunity when we were actually on tour. When was it? About 74. We went to Australia, and Mike Green was a terrific golfer, and we got the invite to go and play at Royal Melbourne Golf Club. Okay, now this is how much I liked golf. I wasn't a golfer then. I didn't play, and I just said yes, I'll play. And it's an absolutely fantastic golf club. And when I went back last year to see my daughter, I even thought about taking my golf clubs, but I thought trying to get on Royal Melbourne would be pretty difficult, I would have thought. But golf has been, it's been a great avenue for me, because it helps me channel my competitive edge. And in golf, we're all gentlemen. We all smile and shake hands, but we all want to win. But we do it with a smile. And when we get beat, well, let's go and have a drink and carry on. Tomorrow's another day. And it's for me, it's my exercise. It's my time to switch off. And just, it's just a game I've always enjoyed, and and I will do for many years to come. I hope, as long as the knees stay together.
Just over the years, you've obviously enjoyed your career, your life in football. What do you make of the last few years at Bristol Rovers? Because you said
the highs and lows, the highs and lows in a small period of time. The day we got relegated from the Football League, I went to my office in the car park and I sat there and I cried. And I cried like a baby for about 30 minutes. And as I'm sat there, I'm thinking, I'm not leaving this room till I get rid of this, because I don't want to cry any more about this, because it hurt that much. And then when we got promoted, that was, thank God. It really was. It was probably, take any great moments that I played in, and felt, oh, that was fantastic, loved that, that was such a great day for me, and I'm sure for lots of other people to think, we're back in the Football League, and then you look at last season, you look at the sight that you've seen at the end of the game on the football pitch here at the Memorial Stadium, waiting for the result to be confirmed that we're going up. I'd have paid anything to have been, I was here, I was part of Bristol Rovers. Again, that brought tears to my eyes, and I just thought, will I ever see a day like this again? I don't know. My dream is that we'll end up in the Premier League before I die. That is my dream. And I think it's possible. I do think it's possible. All things are possible.
Pete, it's been a pleasure talking to you. It's
Keith,
great memories. Thank you very much.
Thank you.